All right, into the charts we go. Bitcoin is having a little bit of an update today. If we looked at yesterday's candle, you could see that we did see kind of initial downside, and then by the end of the day, we had started to float up. So that's not unusual to see some follow through, especially when this is the weekend. And I think that's the biggest thing here is that we've talked about in the past how you can't trust Sundays and Saturdays when the volume is so light. You have to see what the equity markets do when they reopen. The S&P futures will be opening 6 p.m. Eastern time. We'll start to get the dollar open then. We'll get oil. We'll get gold. We'll get all that fun stuff. 10-year yield. All of those things will begin to trade again this evening on the East Coast. So you should see a clearer picture. Can Bitcoin hold its little bit of a bounce here? I think there's a possibility it could. I mean, if you look at the S&P 500, and again, I know this is kind of out of the range of crypto, but it does matter. Notice how we dipped and kind of kissed this blue trend line, which was a retrace to this trend line breakout, right? So you had pivot high, pivot high, pivot high, pivot high. You broke out, and then kind of on Friday, you kind of kissed that blue line low before reversing by the end of the day. Still had a down day on the S&P 500 of about 1%, but we did kind of bounce towards the end of the day off or of a kiss of that level. So if that's the case, if the equity markets are due for a bounce, then I do think crypto could be due for a small bounce as well. Again, I don't expect it at this point to take out the 25 and change level, the 25,000 level on Bitcoin, but again, a small bounce back to 24, 23.75, somewhere in that vicinity would not be unusual after the recent drop. Now, a couple things to go over. We looked at the dollar last week, and I think you want to keep an eye on the dollar here too, because if we look at the dollar, notice how the dollar again now is right up into resistance. So we had the beautiful bounce off support, the bull flag time count, the breakout, and now we're coming into major resistance on the DXY. Now, the reason why the DXY is important is that if the dollar is into resistance, therefore signaling a pullback, that would also give us a reason why crypto could bounce, why stocks could bounce, etc. in the near term. Remember, when the dollar pulls back, risk assets catch a bid. Okay? All right, so just basically, to summarize here, Bitcoin getting a small bounce after the pretty dramatic sell-off last week off of the 25,300 level. And again, that was right into resistance as expected. We obviously had some shorts out there. We did take Matic off the table. I still have my other shorts out there that are mostly in the money at this point. And again, I think at this stage, we want to just continue to, basically just trade the markets, whatever they throw at us. Let's trade it. Let's make money on it, and let's do it right? So let's flip over to Ethereum at this point. Ethereum getting a small bounce, and again, Ethereum off of this. And again, I think the beauty of this is just amazing. See how on this day you pierced the yellow line. Here you pierced it even more, but look at by the end of the day on Saturday where we closed back inside of that yellow trend line, which is again a trend line that is a channel here that we've stayed inside, except for this one little dip here. So again, kind of cool to see that, how you closed back at or above, and then you get the continuation up move. It's as if the chart was basically telling you, hey, I'm holding this level, I'm holding support, therefore path of least resistance is to the upside. All right, now again, if we did start to really move up, where's your resistance? Very clear here. Again, doesn't take a genius to kind of play, pinball off of these levels. This would be your resistance level up here. Again, anywhere from 1765 to 1785. In terms of Ethereum resistance. All right, at some point, do I think we break this lower level? Yes, then we retest this area here, and eventually I even think we break that, and this again is the big level down here, this area right around the 1300, 1350 area on Ethereum. All right, if we take a look at Avalanche real quick, Avalanche after a nice continuation sell, yesterday trading as low as about $17.50, getting a small bounce here back to about $18.50 on the day. Again, nicely in the money on this. Again, if we extend this down-sloping trend line out and this flat trend line, notice how you kind of kissed the blue trend line. Didn't really hit the yellow one, but nonetheless, a little bit of support right there. And again, bouncing with Bitcoin here on this Sunday afternoon, for me at least. Okay, if we continue on to Solana, same kind of deal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down days. 6 if you count off of the highest pivot here. And again, then we're getting a little bit of a bounce on the 7th candle right there. Again, I wouldn't be shocked to see Solana maybe trade back to like $24 or so. But again, ultimately, I do expect it to eventually roll over, attack the $20 level, and then continue down. So I think, again, for the most part, we're in a great position here. Obviously taking a little bit of profit here and there on these trades, on these short trades has been great. We are in the money on Avalanche and Solana, and then out of the money just fractionally on Ethereum, and obviously Bitcoin is that core position that I've been holding on for basically since mid-year 2022 with an average of 25,845. Okay, looking at a couple other charts here as we kind of scan through, let's take a look at the XRP chart. XRP just continues to hug this down-sloping trend line. Even though it hasn't confirmed above, the one positive is that it remains above the yellow line. Remember, being above a line doesn't mean you've broken out until you confirm. Now, at least as long as you stay above the line, it keeps the door open for the confirmation signal to trigger. All right, we'll watch that again. From the latest word is I'm hearing March decision from the judge, but again, I heard that back in November. It was going to be November, and then prior it was going to be September. So right now, that's what the goalpost has been moved to. We'll have to see if that does come through finally. All right, Binance here. Binance, a little bit of an uptick today. Again, it's really just been hugging this yellow line here. I don't really see much on this. Again, same thing. If we were to get an explosive move to the upside, trade up to like 765, 770, that's your major resistance. On the downside, there's minor support here at 286, 287, and then really not until you get down in this lower range would I find major support, right? You have an upsloping trend line here. If I continue that up, and then we drag this one out and this one out, they're kind of coming in towards the same area, right? So this tells you that this area will be the biggest support if we were to flush down there. Just like this, again, would be major resistance, as it's a major pivot to major pivot high level right there. Okay? All right. Let's take a look at Matic, which, again, we don't have in the portfolio anymore. Again, it has bounced back just a little bit, trading just under $1.30. That was a great sell on Matic, though. Again, just kind of looking back at the trade here, you had this beautiful move up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it topped out on that, which gave you the time count for the pullback. And again, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and then kind of put in a little bit of a bottom there as well. So just really cool to look at the 6s and 7s there as they continue to take place. Short term, there is a support level now that has been established since we put this low in. Basically, what you can do here is just connect these lines, right? Look at how the lows are almost perfect with that, all right? So again, if you look here and you take this area, it connects perfectly to the exact low there and there. That gives us a new area of support, which will eventually merge with this one. But honestly, at this stage of the game, this one's your big one. Interestingly enough, that line's almost parallel to this one as well, potentially a new channel starting to form. At some point, do I think Matic breaks this to the downside? Yes, and then obviously this longer-term trend line here, which is more of a parallel to be fair, that now becomes your potential buy opportunity on a swing trade on Matic. Taking a look at the chart of Chainlink. Chainlink, again, has pulled back just a little bit. Still not seeing much on this chart, to be honest. It's a whole hodgepodge. Again, you can make a case a little bit of an inverse head and shoulders, but then again, it broke out and looks like it. Well, no, you know what? You could make a case that it just retraced to the scene of the crime, which actually gives it a buy opportunity. So shoulder, head, and then shoulder, breakout, retrace to the scene of the crime. So as long as this line holds, then the head and shoulders is still triggered and in play. If we map out a calculation for target, we'll call it 550 to, we'll say 750. So that gives you a breakout here of 7. So that would be like a $9.30 target eventually on it, which is interesting because that's kind of right up in this trend line area too. So yeah, maybe. In all fairness, it's actually not a horrendous chart. And the beauty of an inverse head and shoulders is that once it breaks out, right, so you can calculate your exact target. But what's cool about this is that you have the exact calculation on it. And also, if you did want to take this trade, and I'll leave this open. As of now, I'm not planning on jumping in here. But if you did, your stop is any daily close below 725, we'll call it, kind of this yellow line. So any close on the daily below that, you stop out. So it's actually only a very low-risk trade with potential for upside of around $2 of upside from here with maybe a 20, 25, 30-cent stop on it. Again, you can't use a physical stop, though. because they could run that and you have to wait for a daily close. So you just have to monitor it yourself. And again, in all fairness, I really don't, I know I'm generally tuned into the markets enough, and I don't do big share size where I don't really use physical stops. Again, each person has to make that decision for themselves. The reason I don't is because I just don't trust the algorithms, right? I don't trust the running of the stops. When you put a stop out there, you're basically waving a white flag at a certain price, and the bots know, and they can see that. And if your share size is, or your coin size is big enough, if you're with other people at that level, they'll run your stop. They'll take your coins and then rip it the way you wanted it to go after they take you out. So you just have to be aware of it. It's one of the reasons why I monitor the markets. I'm a trader, so I'm always behind the computers, basically. Granted, with crypto, it's 24/7, so obviously I do sleep. But again, you guys see the type of coin size I'm doing. Aside from Bitcoin, I'm 5% of my portfolio is maybe amongst the bigger positions that I'm going to take on any one coin at any one time. All right. Other than that, I'm trying to see if there's anything else here. I do think it's worth looking at OKB, right? Let's take a look at that here. I'm just kind of scanning through. That's now number 22. I just want to see, as far as I know, I honestly don't really understand, what the utility of this coin is, to be honest. But again, that's just me. I don't really care too much, frankly, because I'm a trader. But one thing that jumps out at me on this chart is you have a couple trend lines, right? So number one, this would be, let me do that again. This would be your next short line if you popped up and made a new high. Whenever you hit this trend line now, that would be your resistance line, right? So again, what you could do is technically you could kind of bring this out here, right? And so if we did, let's say we pulled back a little bit more and then made another run up, that would be your short line right there. In terms of support, what you got going on here is a very clear area down here. So a little bit of a megaphone pattern, if you will. You could make a case that it's maybe a little bit of a channel, but I think more of a megaphone pattern, which again still gives you a high level and then a low level. This would be the major support level. I also see a huge level of support right here, which would be a good swing trade as well if it were to dump all the way back. Look, pivot high, pivot high, pivot high, and then break out. So a retrace to the scene of the crime would be right in that level. So anyways, just a couple things there. Quickly, we can go to Cardano. Cardano again. Let me see here. Yeah, I don't see much. I mean, interesting on Cardano, though. There's a trend line here, and look at what you hit. And then there's your bounce. So you are getting a little bit of a bounce there. Just extending this trend line out there. So that'll be resistance. This is support. If support breaks, you're headed here. And if that breaks, you're going down here. Now, if you break out above this, where are you headed? Well, there's actually some resistance right around 43.5 cents. A lot of resistance there. And then eventually maybe 51, 52 cents. With a final, upside move, maybe 59, 60 cents. So again, as of now, there's nothing to do here. A little bit of support here for a small trade, but you're really stuck in a pretty narrow wedge pattern now. And that, again, you have to kind of be careful because narrow wedge patterns can break either way. Could break out, could break down. So if you go long, you go short, you got to be aware of that. And that, to me, is an additional risk, and I can't quantify that right now with odds that make sense. All right, let's take a look at Polkadot. And again, we moved out of Polkadot recently, took that profit just before the dump out on our long trade. And again, in terms of this is your support down here around $6, just above 6. I don't see much else on the radar there. Again, another general decent megaphone pattern type thing. You have this line, and that's why it's called megaphone, because the two lines are slowly getting further and further apart versus a channel, which means they're perfectly parallel. All right, I think that's all for now, folks. Again, overall, little bounce in crypto. Again, when the stock market and the dollar and yields are all closed, I'm always suspect. So it'd be interesting to see tonight into tomorrow when those futures open and seeing kind of how things are trading. But nonetheless, let's keep an eye on it. Let's do what we do best, which is just trade the charts, and we'll go from there. All right, you guys have a good one. Take care.